Most people think narcissists just get angry when you leave, but what actually happens is far more calculated, far more revealing, and far more important for you to understand before it catches you off guard. Here's exactly what their spiral looks like, why it happens, and what they're likely to do next so you can protect yourself. When a narcissist finally realizes you are never coming back, the first thing that happens isn't rage, it's desire. Their want for you goes through the roof. Narcissists always want what they can't have. The moment something is out of reach, the craving intensifies. Psychologists call this the forbidden fruit effect, and it's a real cognitive phenomenon. But in someone with a narcissistic personality pattern, it doesn't just nudge them, it consumes them. The void you leave behind becomes something they fixate on, sometimes obsessively, sometimes for years. And here's something most people don't hear enough. Narcissists don't pursue just anyone. If you were with one long enough for this to hurt, it's because you brought something real to the table, something they valued, even if they were incapable of honoring it. Once they accept that you're genuinely gone, their spiral centers around 4 specific losses: loss of control, loss of a reliable source of emotional supply, the threat of being exposed for who they really are, and a serious injury to their ego. And that spiral doesn't always look the way you'd expect. Sometimes it looks loud and chaotic. Sometimes it looks cold and calculated. Sometimes it looks like a sudden reinvention. And sometimes it looks like complete indifference. But underneath every version of it, the same thing is happening. They can no longer regulate themselves through access to you. The very first move is almost always image control. They don't fall apart privately. They curate publicly. Social media posts shift. They perform happiness, success, virtue, sometimes even spirituality or victimhood. This isn't moving on. It's a frantic attempt to control the story before your absence raises questions about who they actually are. Right behind that comes the rewriting of history. Suddenly they were the patient one, the one who tried, the one who was blindsided, and you become the unstable, ungrateful, impossible one. They need a version of the past that protects their ego from the real reason you left. Then come the tests. Indirect contact disguised as accident, a view on your story, a like on an old post, a vague message out of nowhere, a third party asking how you're doing on their behalf, a so-called emergency that needs your attention. What looks like reaching out is actually something else entirely. They're not looking for genuine connection. They're checking whether they still have access, whether you're still reachable, whether they still matter enough to get a reaction. That's all it is. When the indirect contact doesn't work, some narcissists don't crumble. They get colder, more strategic. This is the version that surprises people most. Instead of emotional outbursts, you get legal pressure, financial games, custody complications, or quiet, calculated retaliation. The spiral isn't always messy. Sometimes it's methodical. Then comes the replacement. They'll make sure you know about the new person. And that can hurt. It can make you question whether you ever mattered at all. But the replacement isn't evidence of healing or happiness. It's a regulation strategy, a temporary patch over the injury. It rarely stops the obsession with the one who left and stayed gone. What comes next is something most people don't see coming. They become obsessed with whether you're okay. Not because they want you to be okay, because they need you not to be. Your suffering confirms their importance. Your peace destroys it. Your genuine happiness, your freedom, your success without them becomes one of the most intolerable things they can imagine, because it disproves everything they told themselves about how much you needed them. And then there's this. Their inability to trigger you actually triggers them. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop defending, stop engaging, they lose the one mechanism they use to feel in control. No access to your tears, your frustration, your panic, your anger. No way to measure their own significance through your reaction. That loss alone can cause a very specific kind of unraveling. From the outside, it looks like oscillation. One day they seem untouchable, superior, completely unbothered. The next, they're vindictive, desperate, or quietly falling apart. The spiral isn't linear, it swings. And eventually, when the emotional tactics stop working, they shift to social ones. They go after your reputation, your relationships, your credibility. When they can't pull you back, they look for ways to punish you for having the audacity to leave with your dignity intact. And that last part matters more than people realize. Walking away cleanly, without drama, without begging, without an emotional meltdown, without falling apart, is one of the most destabilizing things you can do to a narcissist. A clean exit gives them almost nothing to work with, no scene to reframe, no breakdown to use against you, no proof that you couldn't handle it, just calm, clear, and done. That kind of exit injures them more than any dramatic confrontation ever would. Now here's the one that tends to catch people off guard. At some point, usually as a last resort, they start to imitate growth. Suddenly they're in therapy, reading self-help books, posting healing content, using the exact language you once used with them, presenting themselves as changed, reflective, accountable. And sometimes, at a surface level, there may be a small grain of truth to it. But in the spiral phase, what this almost always is identity camouflage. It's designed to recover you as a source of supply, not to become a better person. You'll know its performance because it will evaporate the moment you stand firm. What follows is moral outrage. They become fixated on the injustice of your boundary, not because your boundary is unreasonable, but because your boundary is proof that they are not all-powerful. Every time you don't answer, don't explain, don't engage, don't come running when they manufacture a crisis, it confirms something they cannot tolerate, that you are actually free of them, that your refusal isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Let it be that. And last, even if everything seems to go quiet, don't be surprised if they circle back later, months, sometimes years, when something else in their life fails, when a new source of supply doesn't work out, when life humbles them in some way. They'll return banking on the idea that enough time has passed, that maybe you've forgotten, that maybe you'll let them back through the door. Here is what you need to hold on to through all of it. Their spiral is not your responsibility. You did not cause it. You cannot fix it. And you are not obligated to protect them from it. Your only job is to stay anchored in your own reality, to tell yourself the honest truth about what happened, to protect your peace, and to let their reaction, whatever form it takes, remind you exactly why leaving was necessary in the first place. You were never the problem. The fact that they can't survive your absence without unraveling is the clearest possible proof of that. Follow if you're finally choosing yourself. Everything on this page will remind you why that was the right call.